The agenda this week assessed trends towards plant-based meat and surveyed Ontario's new rules for building housing in the province. The agenda's Week in Review begins analysing the Ford government's first year in office and this week's big cabinet shuffle.
But Premier Ford has a style about him. There's no question about that. Ontarians knew that. Ontarians saw that.
What's the style?
Well, it's very much, sometimes a bull that brings their own china shop with them. But it's far more measured than I think a lot of Ontarians anticipated. I think they thought it was going to be unruly. They did have memories of Mayor Ford, rest his soul. They did have this notion that it was going to be chaotic. It has been challenging, no question. But there is an art to governing versus campaigning. And they're learning, this government, not only the Premier, is learning that in a very hard way.
Can I just gently come back on that? I think people did know what they were getting with Doug Ford, and they didn't really want to think about it that much because they were more focused and fussed about Kathleen Wynne. You're right, he does have a long time ahead, 3 years. However, when you're in this kind of a tailspin, the pollsters will tell you it's very hard to pull out.
Well, especially with those numbers we've seen already, I wasn't looking at approve or disapprove. I was looking at no opinion or unsure. And for Doug Ford, there's not a lot of people who would fit either of that category. I mean, the Liberal leader right now, the interim Liberal leader, half the province doesn't know a thing about him or has no opinion about him. I don't recall exactly when those numbers were up on screen. For Doug Ford, it's what, 4%? Like he does not have a lot of room.
You're not undecided about Doug Ford. You're right, 4.2%. There it is. You're not undecided about Doug Ford.
And to Martin's point, you probably weren't before the election either. You just might have been able to set that aside. I mean, I have never known any Premier of Ontario in all the years I've been watching to come into office with so many people already having such strong opinions one way or the other about him.
Has he, from what you've been able to glean, changed from the guy who was elected on June 7th last year to the guy who's in the Premier's chair today?
I don't think he's changed, but I think he's learned. I think if we can see how he's rolled back on certain things, whether it's his approach to the Greenbelt, whether it was the public health funding cuts, whether it was the cuts to municipalities, the fact that he had to roll back, I think he's been surprised by the reactions he's gotten. I don't think he expected that, and I think he's learned from it. And I think I have to disagree with the panel. I don't think Ontarians expected this. I think Ontarians voted for a guy who was not Kathleen Wynne, to Martin's point, but I don't think Ontarians voted for a haphazard blueprint of cuts. I don't think they expected, autism to be affected or for public health to be affected by when Doug Ford said that I'm going to reduce the deficit. I don't think that's what they thought it would look like.
Can I do a follow-up with you? Because you're kind of like the Daniel Dale who keeps track of every single lie that Donald Trump tells.
That's very kind.
You keep track of every single cut that the Ford government makes.
Yeah, I made a list.
What are we at right now?
I've lost count. I have lost count, but it's a very long list, and I still get emails from readers saying, hey, you forgot this and you forgot that, and there's some of them are very obscure and very small programs that I've never heard of that have lost their funding. I just heard one at Ryerson. There's a program that specifically researches labor practices that was started only a year ago as a pilot program that told me that they had lost their funding and that they wanted to be on the list.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we come into the province with a $15 billion deficit, huge debt. I mean, it's our third biggest spending envelope now. All those dollars that are going towards servicing that debt could be going to education, could be going to healthcare, but instead, the previous government spent and spent and spent. So yes, that one obscure program you're talking about may matter to those 2 or 3 people or those 10 people, but to the broader Ontario public, they're not thinking about it in such a micro manner. They're thinking more broadly that this is a province that has financial challenges. Doug Ford is here to fix that mess, and they are on a path to do so. Perhaps not as fast as I'd like them to do it.
But in the big picture of things, when you see that small program as part of an extensive list of cuts across industry, across sectors, that just doesn't make sense to the average Ontarian.
Maybe those programs don't work.
But I think that
maybe they're ineffective. Maybe they're ineffectual.
Then
maybe
I think the government needs to communicate that better.
I don't disagree with you on that.
Matt.
Just in terms of the communication part of it, I would much rather be defending my cut to 1,000 programs or however many you're up to now that most of us, including you, hadn't previously heard of, than spend a month fighting with the parents of kids that have autism. I mean, that was just a complete disaster. I don't think, and this is one we haven't even touched on yet, we started with it, the fight to cut Toronto City Council. That was exciting here in Toronto. I've talked to friends and family in other parts of the province. They don't care. Like, they just view that as a Toronto issue, and they maybe, like, whatever their thoughts on it were, it didn't really stick with them. But when it came to the autism issue, the public health issue, those two fights have probably done more damage to the government than your entire list of smaller fights.
What the government has done is they've actually made it more difficult to live in either the single-family neighborhood designated areas or the apartment neighborhoods because they're going to be less affordable. But also they took away our ability to make sure that there are parks, schools, infrastructure, recreation centers, basic components of our quality of life to be able to support those who live there today, but also those who are moving in.
Let me get Tim's view on this, because you, as a former PC party leader, I'm interested in whether you think it's appropriate for the province to step in the way that it has, assuming some jurisdiction over what used to be the purview of municipalities.
Yeah, look, when municipalities break their own rules and they're standing in the way of that young millennial finding a place to call home, then I think there is a role for the province to play.
What rules do they break?
Well, when it came to the Yonge and Eglinton, for example, development.
That's where we are right now.
And I get the game, right? Because I get the game. I've been in politics. I know the forces of NIMBYism can be very strong. Councillors will react to current voters as opposed to people who want to move into the area.
What rule do we break?
But when you see at Yonge and Eglinton, where the province and the city are rightly investing billions of dollars into transportation infrastructure, just before a municipal election, to lower the amount of density that's happening in that neighborhood, was a terrible abrogation of good planning rules. It was all politics. The city planners are actually in favor of these developments. So does the province step in to create more affordable units for people? Absolutely, particularly when you put in that kind of
factually untrue.
There's an important piece that's missing here, which is that there's a risk, an enormous risk, to this city, to any city in this province, of just building housing and not also building the infrastructure that creates a livable community, which means we need schools. You can walk out this door, every development in this neighborhood will say, by the way, there's no space left in the schools. There's no room for families in this neighborhood. Yonge and Eglinton currently is building more units than the entire city of Boston. I think one of the risks here right now is that we overemphasize very, very intense, dense areas in the city, and we actually miss out on a provincial-wide scale building housing across the entire province. If we look at Oxford County as an example, Toyota would like to expand their factory, but they cannot for a very simple reason. And these are mid-level paying jobs, anywhere between $60,000 and $150,000. Why? Because they cannot attract employees, because employees cannot afford housing in Oxford County. So here we have Yonge and Eglinton with more density than the entire city of Boston, and we're fixating on that, even though there's no room in the local schools. You cannot put your child into swimming lessons in this neighborhood because there's so much development taking place here already.
May I add on to what Jen was saying? Because, Tim, with all due respect, you said something that is just factually untrue. We're not only are we not breaking rules, we're also not tying the hands of development.
You're rewriting your own rules before election campaign.
Are you?
Josh,
that is
Hang on,
not.
let's go one at a time here. Josh, finish,
that is
please.
just not true. I know it's good. It's a good narrative for you, my friend. But ultimately, what the City of Toronto did is spend years with consultation with the development industry, with residents, and led by our planning department, our objective independent planners, to come up with a plan that did not say no to growth. What it did was manage growth to ensure that while we grow, and we recognize we're going to grow, we have room for people to be able, as Jen said, to get their kids to a recreation center, to be able to go to school. I live in Midtown Toronto, and I can tell you, at my child's school, and I mentioned this to you earlier, they had to take the 6th grade classes out of all the elementary schools, the TDSB, because they were getting overcrowded. They are struggling, and they put them into a middle school that now they're trying to figure out how to accommodate growth there. It's not about pro or anti-growth. It's about how do you do it well to support people's quality of life. The Ford government took those tools away.
Come on. When you change the rules in the middle of the game, when before a municipal election campaign, municipal councillors start overruling recommendations by planning staff to win votes, I've got a problem with that because I've got to advocate for people who want to get into the housing market
overrule?
and experience home ownership.
Which one?
a whole
Tell
whack
me,
of things
tell
along
me.
in Eglinton where you lower the density. Now the province has stepped in and
We
said, let's
adopted
make this
planning staff's
appropriate.
recommendations.
And with the issue with Oxford County,
I think just to pick up on this, I think the narrative is a bit confused here because we're actually talking about one of the highest growth neighborhoods in North America, which is Yonge and Eglinton. The first highest is the downtown core. So it's not like we have a no growth scenario or a low growth scenario. I think the conversation actually needs to focus on the vast areas, both within Toronto and outside of Toronto, where there's absolutely no growth taking place, and there's an opportunity to put the transit infrastructure in place, to put the schools in place, to build really complete communities.
Let me just start by reading this to get our discussion going here. According to Allied Market Research, in 2017, meat substitutes accounted for over $4 billion in sales globally. They expect that number to nearly double to almost $8 billion by the year 2025. Lisa, to you first. Why has there been so much growth in this area?
Well, I think there's been growth happening over the last 5-10 years or so, and we're just seeing this sort of, fruition of the market happening right now. And I think it has a lot to do with just more information about the linkages between health and diet and more evidence-based research regarding animal-based proteins and their effects on human health. Also, the linkages between industrial meat production and climate change. And I just think more consumers are becoming aware of these connections and rethinking some of their dietary choices.
Adam, why did your company decide to get into this field?
Well, we've intended to spend about $600 million into this space. We've bought two of the largest plant-based protein companies in the United States, as well as we're going to be investing in a large facility. We see tremendous growth. We're seeing consumers looking for a variety of protein, whether that's meat-based or plant-based protein, for a variety of reasons that was called out earlier. And we're just excited to be in it, and we're playing to win.
Playing to win. That sounds like a thing corporations say. We're playing to win.
Well, we have had two brands, probably the two largest brands in the United States, Field Roast and Light Life. And we're well beyond a burger. I mean, you're seeing a lot. That's what you're seeing in the food service space. We produce tempeh, burgers, sausages, a variety of products, cheese even. And we're seeing tremendous growth in that space with consumers.
Dana, let me figure out, or see if we can figure out what's new about this, because veggie burgers have been around for years.
You're
so how's
right.
this different?
What's different is that these companies that are succeeding right now have been coming at it from through the lens of biomimicry. So instead of trying to make something that is just vaguely similar to a meat burger, they really are trying to duplicate it. So in 2009, the Beyond Meat folks said, this is our moonshot, this is what we're going for. And they applied, science and a lot of technological insight into figuring out how to duplicate that matrix of fibers that make meat meaty, how to duplicate the juiciness. In fact, they've ended up taking the heme that's naturally in soybeans and using yeast to ferment that, and that's what gives you that juiciness and that pink color. So this is not just cooking, this is food science, and that's the difference. We have a researcher at the University of Guelph who is working at trying to duplicate the fibers in a steak. And so that's, obviously going to be a huge endeavor, and we're investing a ton into that lab. And that's where we're going with this biomimicry.
Rosie, the vegetarians were always interested in this kind of thing, but this clearly has moved beyond vegetarians. How come?
Well, I think that people are looking at some of what Lisa has said in terms of health, in terms of the environment, but I'm not so sure that they're always getting a healthy choice.
Tell me what you mean.
Well, some of these plant-based burgers or alternatives, some of them may be healthier. It depends on what the ingredients are. But some are what's called ultra-processed. They contain all kinds of ingredients that we normally wouldn't find in food. Some of them are loaded with sodium, they're loaded with saturated fat, and so if people are choosing them, if they're meat eaters and they're choosing some of these plant-based burgers for health, they have an undeserved health halo. And so you need to look at each product individually.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review for this Friday, June 21st, 2019. All of those conversations are available on our website, that's tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and on our Twitter feed, that's twitter.com/theagenda. Okay, Monday on the program, we're looking beyond our shores at how Canada's dealing with a tricky foreign policy portfolio right now. Also, we get an American perspective on whether there's such a thing as a Trump doctrine on international affairs. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you back.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.